Thailand's Deep South has been in a state of emergency for 20 years, a conflict festering between government and insurgents.
ใครไม่เหมาะว่าทุกเลยจริงเลย
In one incident, nearly 100 died, but no one's ever been held accountable.
And with this peace, people not listen us.
Now, their families have one last chance at justice.
They're not quite used to this amount of public scrutiny.
Will it be finally served? Thailand's sudden discomfort. A typical morning in Thailand. Buddhist monks going around the neighborhood, asking for their alms for the day. Children arriving at school, standing in line before classes start for the morning flag salute. Except it's not really all that regular when you take a closer look. There are heavily armed police checkpoints. But this is normal here in Thailand's three southernmost provinces, Yala, Pattani, and Narathiwat, where a deadly insurgency conflict has been taking place for the last 20 years. But the story began a lot earlier than that. For many years, this area was part of the Malay Sultanate of Pattani, thriving in the 16th and 17th centuries. Over the years, it was gradually absorbed into what used to be Siam, until a treaty finally made it official in 1909, making it part of what's now Thailand. Old government showreels portray the locals here as loyal subjects to the king, just like the rest of the country.
ชาติไทยอิสลามนั้นเร่งในศาสนาอิสลามและส่วนมากไม่ค่อยจะได้สังคมกับคนนอกศาสนานักแต่ก็ยังอุตส่าห์พากันมาเฝ้าทูลละอองธุลีพระบาทด้วยความยินดี
Closer to Malaysia than to Bangkok, people have a strong Malay identity. They have kept their Muslim faith, but they had to assimilate in other ways to become more conventionally Thai. The local dialect Yawi was suppressed. And economically, this region has been long neglected. Tensions and mistrust against the Thai state, governing from far away in the capital Bangkok, some 1,000 kilometers simmered, and has been continuing for years. Almost 50 years ago, Mayeng Mabe joined one of the biggest militant groups, the Barisan Revolusi Nasional, or BRN. He has been a member for 20 years. He says he had enough of Thai authorities treating ethnic Malay people like him as second-class citizens.
Masuk dalam tekan gapakan masa tu kerja saya raya kita tukar lu. Kata kita naik ruang kita kerja hak gini-gini sama dia kita rakyat kita rakyat tak ada orang pun mana. Dengar ke utara masuk ke PUP tak ada harga apa kali. Dia kata kita manusia beragama Islam ni kerja hina sangat, kerja akati sangat ada. Kita kena pakat satu puak itu duk we tahu kata-kata kita lawan juga. Benih lah tu tak kira lah. Bukan nak nilai, bukan nak berdeka tak. Nak we kerja tahu kata kita tu tak puas hati untuk lagu ni.
Insurgent groups have on occasion carried out attacks against Thai authorities. Their ultimate goal is an independent sultanate. But 2004 marked a tipping point for the Deep South. In April 2004, the Crusade Mosque in Pattani province was taken over by 32 militant gunmen. After hours of standoff, the military stormed the mosque and left no survivors. A single bullet hole is all that remains of that day. An international inquiry would later conclude that the military used excessive violence. But that was just the beginning of events escalating. We head further south, near the border to Malaysia, to a town whose name has become synonymous with one of the deadliest incidents in recent Thai history. 20 years have passed and his hair's turned white. But Hayading Maiseng still remembers October 25th, 2004 vividly. He was out and about running errands when he happened to pass by the local police station.
ไปถึงแล้วมีคนมาเต็มแล้วนะพอตะใบและดังอำเภอประมาณเกือบ1,000 คนแล้วช่วงนั้นเบดิงไปแต่ว่าเจ้าหน้าที่มาแต่คืนมันรู้มาก่อนเบดิงเจ้าหน้าที่มันรู้ก่อนเลย
The police had arrested 6 locals the night before, accused of stealing weapons, and people had gathered to demand their release. The military was called in. They fired water cannons and tear gas, and also live rounds. Hayading was caught in the middle of all this.
ประมาณ3:30 นาที3:15 นาทีก็ช่วงนั้นเขายิงสั้นยิงอีกเที่ยวหนึ่งยิงแล้วก็ประมาณกับพื้นดินก็ประมาณสูงประมาณ1 เมตรเขายิงก็บอกว่าใครไม่เหมาะตัวทุกเลยยิงเลยเขายิงนั้นดังโปรช่วงนั้นแล้วก็เบดิงก็ช่วงนั้นแหละเบดิงที่ถูก
The bullet went through Hayading's chest, but he survived. 7 people, however, were killed in the crackdown. About 1,300 people were rounded up by the military. Back then, Ganawi Sipsang was an officer with the National Security Council, and he was monitoring the situation that day at a nearby regional office. He received a call from a military colleague about what was going to happen next.
He said, hey, now we have to transport these people. And I said, my friend, at that time it's around 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So in order for them to transport people from Tak Bai police station to Inkayutta Bolihan military headquarters, it's long, it's far. So if we drive the car, just only the sedan car, we will spend like 4 hours plus something. But in order for them to transport 1,000 plus people with the convoy, big convoy, and the security situation is not stable at that time, they said, they need to do it now. I said, my friend, you have to stop. You could not transport people from 3 o'clock in the afternoon. How long is it going to take you guys to reach to Inkayutta Borihan military headquarters? I said, maybe 10 hours, 9 to 10 hours. I said, they would die, my friend.
Stripped to their waist and tied at their hands, over 1,000 people were stacked one on top of another in the army trucks for the long drive to the military camp. 78 people did not survive the drive. Subsequent autopsies found that all of them died of suffocation and collapsed organs, but no one has ever been prosecuted for the deaths so far.
20 years after the Tak Bai incident, there's nothing much left that reminds you of it. The police station behind me, it's still there, but there's a tranquil silence in this town. And the place over here, where the protesters were, it's been paved over. You have the 2 pavilions behind me overlooking the river, but that's it. And that's what critics say is emblematic about how authorities are dealing with the past, especially when things go wrong. But very few incidents in the past are still being felt as strongly today, especially here in the Deep South, as much as what happened 20 years ago in Tak Bai.
A small memorial on a graveyard outside of Tak Bai is one of the few signs that still bears any reference to what happened. 20 years and a generation on, not only is the memory threatening to fade away, but also justice from ever being served. Tak Bai, a town that's become known for an incident that happened 20 years ago. Almost 100 people died in military custody, igniting long-simmering tensions that continue until today. 2 days before we arrived in Tak Bai, a car bomb was set off in town, not far from where the original incident happened. We got to see firsthand the sheer scale of destruction at the scene.
It happened in the middle of the night. A vehicle was stolen just an hour before the incident. It was rigged with explosives, and they let it roll down this alleyway before triggering the bomb. It left a scene of carnage, debris everywhere, and the house is barely standing. And the explosion was so strong that it even blew a hole into the opposite wall over here as well. Now, this place was not chosen randomly. Over there is the house of the district chief, and right over here, if you follow me around, that over there, there's a bed, and that bed belongs to a high-ranking military officer. He just happened not to be here. He was lucky. Unlike two off-duty soldiers who walked past here, they were severely injured. Now, authorities think that this is connected to the 20th anniversary of Tak Bai. Not only do they think that it is a reminder of what happened back then, not only a reminder of the statute of limitations that is running out, but also a reminder of darker, more violent days in the past.
Arson, drive-by shootings, and bomb attacks became almost a regular occurrence since the insurgency escalated in 2004. Most of the targets were security officials. These seen here on CCTV footage narrowly escaped grenades thrown at them while sitting in a cafe. Civilians were targeted too, Buddhists and Muslims alike. Schools and hospitals were not spared from attacks. More troops were sent to the region. These soldiers are on the hunt for insurgents. Since 2005, an emergency decree has been in place for Thailand's three southernmost provinces of Yala, Pattani, Narathiwat, as well as parts of neighboring Songkhla. And it has been extended 77 times. The state of emergency gives authorities extended powers. They can, for example, detain people for up to 30 days in military confinement without trial or charge. With a heightened security presence came allegations of human rights violations. A member of Anchana Hemina's family got into trouble with the authorities. She saw firsthand his ordeal under the special security laws and decided to become a rights activist after that.
My brother-in-law was arrested in terms of national security case, and then he acquitted after 2 years in the court, in the trial process. He found it innocent. But during that time, my families and I also saw, we are witness, the people who involved in the justice system, they suffer from the justice process, like the language, the traveling, the fee, the lawyers, and they don't have a knowledge to fighting to protect themselves. That's why we work a lot about to promote the law, to promote the human rights, to make them have a right to protect themselves.
Over the years, the conflict slowed down. The rights group Deep South Watch has been monitoring the violence for 20 years. Over 7,600 people have been killed in this conflict. It hit a peak of almost 900 in 2007, before declining in the last decade to hover around 100 deaths in these past 5 years. One contributing factor are the peace talks facilitated by Malaysia. Starting in 2013, representatives from the Thai government and selected insurgency groups discussed the conditions for a potential ceasefire. However, a military coup and changing governments in that time meant new Thai lead negotiators kept being appointed. And the current government that came into office in September has yet to name their representative. There was little progress to show for after a decade of talks till earlier this year. Both sides agreed on a framework known as the Joint Comprehensive Peace Plan, or the JCPP. And observers say it is a step in the right direction.
Is a basics for the consensus. But of course, we cannot come to the end point yet, because what the insurgents or BIN, want is something that the Thai state cannot offer, and what the Thai state or RTG wants, is not what BRN can accept, which is to let the situations, become under control of the Thai states, under the Thai constitutions.
Up in the military ranks, there's also been changes. A new regional commander is starting his first day at work. He meets the men under him and then takes some time to answer questions from the media. He emphasizes that the path to peace is always open.
ผมเองก็อยากจะพูดว่าในการเหตุการณ์ที่เกิดขึ้นมาปั๊บเรื่องในอดีตเมื่อกี่ร้อยปีแล้วซึ่งบางประเทศก็ไม่กล่าวถึงกันเรื่องอดีตแต่เราเองไปกระบวนการเนี่ยเอายกเรื่องอดีตที่มาบิดเบือนเรื่องต่างๆคำสอนที่มาบิดเบือนต่างแล้วก็นำไปคัดค้นเข้าสู่กระบวนการต่อสู้ต่างๆซึ่งจริงแล้วเนี่ยเราก็มีช่องทางในการแก้ปัญหาโดยสันติวิธีมีอยู่แล้วนี่ก็ต้องการสื่อให้กับกระบวนการได้รับทราบด้วยว่าแนวทางการแก้ไขปัญหาของรัฐต่างๆไม่ได้ใช้ความรุนแรงเลยต้องการให้สันติวิธีต่างๆ
It's a clear message by the military. The other side should cease hostilities against the Thai state in order to achieve peace. But observers see little being done to address the roots of the conflict.
The Thai strategy, the Thai government strategy, regardless of which government comes through, is two-pronged. One is to use military means to crush the insurgency. Two is to use, to win hearts and minds of the local people. They have failed on both sides. The trust is still there, the mistrust, the historical mistrust is still there. And like I said, on the military side, the violence, you see a steady rise over the past 5 years. So in a way, they have failed on that side as well.
One source of that mistrust is what is being seen as a prevailing sense of impunity, especially with a tragedy that's been seared into the memory of the locals here.
แต่ตรงนี้เวลาแฟนก็ชอบใส่ไปละหมาดก็เลยนึกถึงเขาเวลาเห็นสรุปนี้
เสื้อตัวนี้ก็เป็นเสื้อน้องชายที่เขาเสียในเหตุการณ์ตักใดเสื้อตัวนี้เป็นเสื้อที่ตัดเพื่อจะให้เขาใส่ในวันฮาริรายโย
These are some everyday items left behind by the victims of the Tak Bai incident 20 years ago. Their relatives have preserved them for an exhibition to not only keep the memory of their loved ones alive, but also how much that day has impacted those left behind.
ถ้าจำก็แล้วก็จะนึกถึงพ่อแม่เลยเพราะผมได้ดูสึกถึงความพ่อแม่คือว่าความรู้สึกของพ่อแม่ผมก็รับที่ได้ดูพ่อแม่ว่าเวลาสูญเสียเขาเจ็บปวดเขาอะไรเนี่ยผมก็เป็นคนหนึ่งที่อยู่ในดูเหตุการณ์ที่พ่อแม่เป็นอย่างนั้น
ชาวบ้านทั่วไปเห็นเราเป็นศัตรูหรือเป็นอะไรก็ไม่ตอนเกิดเรื่องใหม่ๆนะก็ไม่กล้าเผชิญหน้ากับใครก็กลัวเขาว่าดูเราแล้วเป็นศัตรูทางที่เราไม่รู้ว่าเขาไปตักใบเขาเป็นไปทำอะไรยังไม่รู้เลย
In 2012, the authorities paid out 7.5 million baht, or almost $240,000 to each of the victims' families. Very little happened in the years in between. But then suddenly in August 2024, the wheels of justice started turning again. A local court in Narathiwat province accepted a complaint by the victims' families. It charged 7 former high-ranking military officers for murder, among other offenses. Months have passed, and none have appeared in court so far. One of them is General Pisan Watanamukiri, the former army commander in charge of the South. He's now a lawmaker for the governing Pheu Thai party. A committee in the Thai parliament is investigating why no one has been put on trial.
I've been waiting for an hour now in front of this door. We were supposed to get inside to observe the committee meeting, but apparently there's a fight among the committee members themselves. There are representatives of foreign embassies that are here, but they haven't given an advance notice. So that's why they're quarreling about whether or not we are supposed to go inside. And also there's a lot of media, as you can see. We hear that a lot of members are also not quite happy about this because apparently they're not quite used to this amount of public scrutiny.
The committee has summoned police and military officers asking about the whereabouts of the defendants. They admitted that at least 2 defendants, including General Pisan, are currently not in the country despite standing arrest warrants against them. And somehow the others cannot be located either. Opposition lawmaker Ramadan Panjor covered the Deep South as a journalist. He has often come across General Pisan in his former and current jobs. The two have often talked about their experiences in the South, including the Tak Bai incident. He thinks that his fellow MP should take the opportunity to clear his name.
ผมว่านี่คือโอกาสไม่ใช่โอกาสแค่กระบวนการยุติธรรมไทยที่จะพิสูจน์ให้พี่น้องประชาชนซึ่งหลายครั้งหลายคนก็เสื่อมศรัทธาไปเยอะแยะมากมายแล้วเนี่ยนะครับจะเป็นข้อพิสูจน์ว่ากระบวนการยุติธรรมไทยมันสามารถทำงานได้อยู่นะมันยังเป็นหลักให้กับสังคมนี้ในการคลี่คลายปมปัญหาสำคัญได้อยู่นะแต่นี่ยังเป็นโอกาสให้กับจำเลยด้วยเหมือนกันในการคลายปมที่ผมเชื่อว่าบางท่านเนี่ยก็ยังมีปมพวกนี้อยู่ในใจซึ่งจากที่ผมสัมผัสเองเนี่ยที่นั่งคุยเองเนี่ยผมก็รู้ว่าเรื่องนี้ยังเป็นปมคาใจของท่าน
The statute of limitations runs out 20 years after the incident. After October 25th, 2024, the victims' families will no longer be able to seek justice in the courts, but they are still holding on to hope.
ความยุติธรรมต้องมีแน่จะเร็วหรือช้าต้องมาถึงสักวันหนึ่ง
Kita nak cari dia nak kita nak cari nak we jadi dia tu mengaku salah tu. Dia buat ni tak ada apa salah. Dia buat. Pasal we dengan we kata demo tu mengaku salah tu.
The time to heal a wounded memory is running out.